It's been a very long time since we've last been graced by the camcorder goodness of the Outlast series. Outlast 2 came out in 2017, and since then, we've kind of been left on hiatus. Last year, though, the Outlast Trials came out on PC, or at least a beta or something, to what seemed like a good reception. And so, even though I was skeptical of it going into a multiplayer format, I still eagerly awaited its console release, which was slated for March the 5th. Does this game meet the horror standards left by its predecessors? Let's find out. Outlast Trials takes the gameplay of the first two games and uses it as a base to expand into more multiplayer-focused directives. Whereas in Outlast 1 or 2, you're basically playing a running simulator with minor deviations at times, like pushing a cart or cranking a generator, in Trials, you'll go into an area and be given an objective, typically something perverse, to accomplish before you return to the transport that brought you there. To give you some examples of things from early in the game, you'll be doing things like finding hidden keys inside of corpses, poisoning little orphan mannequins, or pushing carts with people on them. Okay, it's not completely new territory, but while in previous games these things may have been a novelty in the overall experience, in Trials they are the focus. You'll select a trial from the hub world, go into this kind of subway car where you'll be given a little tease for the directive, and then you'll go to the mission site to do whatever steps they ask of you to complete it. These directives can vary a bit, but for the most part they function in similar fashions. Go into the area, look around for something, use it or bring it with you, and then go on and do the next thing that they got for you. I think it works well with the multiplayer, but I don't personally find it as engaging as the solo games because of the more repetitive nature just by virtue of what the game actually is. As I'm sure you know, this is a multiplayer-focused game. Multiplayer here being PvE and not competitive. I'd come to the wrong assumption with my previous no knowledge of this game that it was going to be a foot race kind of thing. Murkoff would place us in trials, and the objective would be to run to the goal before the others. That's not what this game is. This is a co-op game where up to 4 friends or random players come together to finish an objective as fast as possible. Because you're all working together and there are 4 of you, this means that there has to be something for you to do. So with multiple objects to collect or buttons to press, that gives everyone a different place to search. This also means that there have to be a lot more enemies on the map to make the danger levels higher so that you're not all running from Mother Gooseberry. In fact, I would even say that there are often too many enemies on the map, especially if you don't have a full party. You can play this game with no accompaniment if you want, but there is no scaling to match the level of players in your lobby. If the mission had you finding 5 bottles of bleach with 4 players, you've still got to find 5 bottles with just you. Now, it's not truly that difficult typically, it just takes you longer and forces a much more prominent stealth approach. The real issue that I have with the enemies is that it harshly limits exploration. The environments are arguably just as interesting in Trials as they are in Outlast 1 or 2, but you'll have a hard time ever getting to stop and smell the corpses, because around every corner there's a new enemy that chases you all around. And if there's not, the researchers will send one down through the elevator to make sure you're not dawdling. Speaking of the environments, let's talk about the areas that you can explore in this game. There are basically 2 to match the 2 main antagonists of the game, depending on who you want to frame as antagonists. You've got missions associated with Leland Coyle, the cop with an electrocution fetish, which revolve around things like police precincts or the justice system. Then you've got Mother Gooseberry, the puppeteer dentist, whose missions are focused on things like orphanages or dentist-themed amusement parks. Again, these are interesting places, but they're often just a blur as you're attempting to maneuver through tight corridors, running from all manner of people that want to kill you. In terms of how you'll be getting to these missions though, you'll be based in a sort of hub world with access to a terminal. On the terminal, you can choose the mission from 4 different programs: Program Genesis, Program X, Program Ultra, and weekly challenges. Genesis is the easiest, X is the middle, then Ultra is the toughest, but unfortunately the missions don't really change between the difficulties. You'll find almost the exact same missions on every step of the ladder, just with slightly different challenges added to them, like harder enemies, what have you. As for the hub world though, that's where you'll earn the fruits of your labor. During missions, based on how well you do, you'll be scored on an A through F system. This score attributes to the money that you can earn to buy cosmetic things, vouchers which can be used to upgrade your character, and tokens which are used for this game's story. For cosmetics, you'll have a room which you can decorate, as well as character skins. The skins are for your teammates' benefit, because this game is first person, but it's nice to set yourself apart. Then, the room is more interesting to me, but it doesn't really serve much of a purpose outside of just being a time and money sink. The real changes will be in the upgrades, which can be purchased through the voucher system. You'll have 3 NPCs you can talk to in the hub world, and each can benefit you with their purchases. You've got the nurse, who provides you with passive buffs to your character. Then you've got the jaded inmate, who can give you items that have buffs on them, of which you can have 3 at a time. And finally, there's the engineer, from which you can buy rigs, which is basically this game's class system. There are 4 different rigs. One that allows you to heal, one that allows you to expand your night vision, one that allows you to lay traps, and finally, one that allows you to toss a projectile to stun enemies. These are important as you get higher in the game, and enemies just always seem to be breathing down your neck. Personally, I think that the stun class is the best, but if you had a party where you were fully communicating with your teammates, then I am sure that they all have their benefits.
Y'all are all equal under the law. You're gonna pay this back in spades!
Now, all that is basically the core concept of the gameplay, but personally, I don't really play Outlast for the gameplay. I'm more in it for the lore and the story. So, how is Outlast Trials' story? Yeah. Well, to be honest with you, it doesn't really have one. I mean, it has a loose narrative, but in terms of cutscenes, all you'll get is the intro and the ending. The intro is excellent. You're a homeless person who finds a flyer and follows up to be taken into this crazy world of experimentation run awry. However, after that, it's really only held up by the nebulous words of Dr. Easterman, who speaks to you through the headset. What I come to Outlast for is the characters and the scares, and by virtue of this being a multiplayer game, it pretty well neuters both of those. In my opinion, fear doesn't go well with friends. So even if Coyle would have been creepy on his own, when you have 4 people chucking bottles at his head, it's much less effective. The bigger issue for me, though, is that I struggle to even get attached to Gooseberry or Coyle because you spend no real time with them. If you ever have a scripted scene with them, then there's a barrier between the two of you because, again, it would be 4-on-1. This essentially makes the trials seem like a haunted house rather than an adventure. In the original Outlast games, you obviously got to know these characters better. They were interacting with just you, and by virtue of that, you felt like you had a relationship with them. In this game though, outside of a small fight in the intro with Gooseberry, these character interactions just aren't here. Personally, I think the game could have done with at least one solo kind of intro mission to these characters, so that you can really have some form of a rapport with them outside of them just being weird murderers. Of course, there are documents in the game, which is really where the story is contained if you want to delve deeper into anyone, but that's all subtext on top of a narrative that I find kind of lackluster.
Release your sadness and fear. You don't belong to any nation or church or family. You belong to you. Let us tell you how to get better. You could be happy, confident, productive.
So to wrap up my thoughts on the game, it's fine. I don't love it, but it hasn't been a chore to play or anything. As someone who doesn't often delve down the multiplayer rabbit hole, this wasn't really what I was hoping for in terms of the next Outlast game, but that doesn't make it bad. The gameplay is pretty enjoyable, and I can only imagine it being even better if you had 3 friends to come along with you. However, as someone who was really looking forward to a more character-driven thing, this isn't that. If I was gonna give this game a score, it would probably land at like a 7 for me. To know what Outlast as a series has been, it's difficult to disassociate that from what this game is. However, if I were to take Outlast and turn it into a co-op multiplayer game, I don't know how you would make that game any better than what they've made this one. It feels like Outlast. The environments, the documents, the zany killers, it's all very Outlast, but without at least some version of back and forth like with Traeger or Glueskin, the game still feels like it's missing something. Anyway, if you've played it, feel free to let me know what you think about the game. I do plan on doing some lore for it once I found all the documents, which seems like it's going to be a pain, since, from what I can tell, they're all RNG. But anyway, thank you all for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope to see you all in the next one.